Hello! Today we're going to talk about tortured metaphors. The tortured metaphor. It doesn't hold up to proper scrutiny. Any thought will break it down. Metaphors are an intricate part of literature because there are metaphors all around us. Why press for bad execution?
That's it.
We project lives and actions. We must see ourselves in the world, similar to the way a person may sometimes accuse others for what they feel guilty about. We will accuse things of being symbols. The refuse that hits the fan. Life is sending you a wake-up call. They are all examples of our advice and thoughts being reflected in the world. A man standing over a straight at a green light is not thinking about the green light. He is thinking about the future and his idealized past. He is staring at it, just out of reach. Of course, this is a good metaphor, plainly laid out at the end of The Great Gatsby. It is a metaphor for hope. Our idealized past makes our dreams. Why feel guilty over something stretched, such as illusions? Guilt is something we don't want to admit, that we do not want to live up to. As a boy, I felt guilty for many boyish actions. I ran the hose all over the driveway, and it seems pretty odd, but I didn't even question whether or not I should. I just did it. Working a retail job and getting nowhere while the appreciation for the people around me seeps away calls for a similar kind of awakening. Friends get paid better and better. People learn and train and work towards their dreams. Sometimes it might not even dawn on you that you are unhappy and wasting your own potential until something jars you. Fan and impact. And the emperor has no clothes. You can realize what you were doing may have been wrong all along. I'm excited when something's been wrong all along. To try is to fail, and to fail is to learn. Texture metaphors must be discovered to find those that are loose. Loose metaphors lead to those that fit properly in simplicity and functionality. Life, the video game where losing a life means you can try again with another avatar, but you can't in life, but you can in metaphor and illusion and illustration. Stretched, tortured metaphors exist for the metaphor that won't quit.
They could laugh at him, but couldn't ignore him.
I'm glad you're here watching this. I'm here again this week, and we have a special guest, our friends from the Black Lodge. What's forced perspective? You know that's not how forced perspective works, right? Okay, you do you, bro. So I first heard the phrase tortured metaphor from the Vlogbrothers, and that was to mean a metaphor that is stretched beyond its usefulness. A metaphor for one thing, then taken and examined closer upon a deeper illusion, where the metaphor falls away and then all we have is explanation, which is entertaining. That's how we learn about things. We start out with a story and then it goes beyond and we look into it, and the more we learn about the subject, the less the metaphor or the symbolism or the simile matters to it. But as I said in my last video, that's part of using a metaphor and part of why they're great. The phrase tortured metaphor stuck a lot more with me than it did for other nerd fighters. It was really hard to find. I didn't find any Vlogbrothers clips where they said it anymore. Like, they're there, but I've just can't find them, and they're not being cataloged by the community because it wasn't a phrase that hit everyone like it hit me. Just like tortured metaphor. I dug onto this phrase. So the poetic part of the intro was originally a blog I put up on Sugar Words, and it was put up there flippantly because I was just thinking about the phrase that got stuck in my head. And I noticed that people kept coming back to it from like all around the world. And I'm like, oh no, people are using this for reference. So I expanded upon it. And it is less a piece about defining a tortured metaphor, and is more a piece on how it feels and what it means to me. Let's say you have a metaphor like I need to stretch my money. If you say I'm fiscally responsible, I put my money on the rack.
The rack is a torture device that stretches people.
Now you have a torture metaphor. If you say, and this is very complicated, I want to put my money on the rack to get the most out of my time, and sometimes it is held because I like to feel pain, that is a tortured torture metaphor. I want this video to be more than just an English lesson. I want it to be an English lesson. I want to talk about the book Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And also, this is America. This is America might be the most popular straight-up art installment that we've had like on the internet. Like, it is performance art. So much so that Donald Glover refuses to explain it and wants it to stand for itself. Obviously, before you watch any video explaining it, including this one, I would suggest that you watch it. And there is no lack of people that are ready to explain it, but mostly people that use weird red axes and red circles. Oh, all I needed to understand this was a couple red circles and arrows. Now that that's there, I totally get it. Like, you'll get it. Maybe watch it twice. Maybe look where you're not supposed to look. Of course, two takes that I really liked were, one, Digibro, who isn't black, but does a lot to pay attention to the black community. And two, Peter Coffin. And I would suggest some black people that have related it and tried to explain it and relate it to their own experiences, but I haven't been able to find them. I mean, I would love suggestions down below, but they're drowned out by the kind of black people that says there is no problems with society, and Time Magazine and Watch Mojo and all those companies that just pump out analysis videos for no reason. Really corny, cheesy analysis videos with no voice. I hate them.
What?
Yes, Invisible Man, we're getting to that. So, somewhere behind all of this distraction culture, this black people in turmoil, how we treat minorities in America, it goes back to Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. Wow, I wrote this sentence, but I don't understand it completely. I wrote this. Invisible Man is not a boot that stretches its metaphors and symbols, but instead the audience necessitates that breach of language. Ellison doesn't try to speak to white people in the book. It's not what the book is for. The book is first and foremost for black people. He uses a lot of black slang. Whole sections of the book take place in either the ghettos of the South or in Harlem, and there's no qualm about just putting in the language of those places into the book without care for whether or not the reader can understand it. It gives a sense of chaos to the scenes that they're in that I think match very well. They're not slow book scenes, they're chaotic, confusing scenes, and they're done so fantastically well. Our narrator, the Invisible Man, moves in and out of these dense and complicated situations because of his invisibility. He is put in these chaotic situations with two opposing sides that clash actively around him and pull him in one direction or another. There's no other explanation for how the narrator sees these weird things from his point of view other than that he is invisible.
Yeah, I am invisible. Be here, and there stand simply because me a ray of ooze to set me like he does. He less has this heel who see something Yah Miz Ni Sar Sahasai So is as oh I have been so the me of Harvard this ever glass hun stea Slosh me si no sri mi sa hawin dandigas sta slivis go how fig mo half star maj nay so ni these very for panic and these ni stop slindic me.
There's these constant contradictions to the cleanness of the situation. He gets a scholarship for which he must say a speech, but before he gets the scholarship, he has to fight in a shirtless, blindfolded, bare-knuckle battle royale with other black students that are trying to get the same scholarship. And when he wins, he is woozy from the fight and does the speech, and the speech doesn't even matter to him. It's so far off, and all he's left with is a mouth full of blood. He is embarrassed in front of these white rich men that have supplied the scholarship and are then entertained by the scholarship winners. He goes to college and gets a part-time job and driving wealthy donors around. And one wealthy donor asks to see how black people really live. And then the narrator really takes him there. And because of complications, because of that, the narrator gets kicked out of college and literally sent to New York, where he gets a job that he doesn't know how to do. And because he doesn't know how to do it, the job explodes on him, and he finds himself in a coma and then wandering the streets of Harlem, where he's welcomed to a home that he eventually has to run away from, and it's not his real home. And then on the streets, he finds himself accepted by a group called the Brotherhood, because on the streets he gives speeches that riles up movements in people that forward black civil rights. But the people that control him and tell him what to say are white and are doing it for white interests. At least white comfort. Until he slips away to hide and live underground, where he writes his story and finds himself. An odd book, but also a classic and also fantastic. The thing that struck me most about this book, that I don't hear other people talk about as much, is how speech is used. Speeches and public speaking are a weird cornerstone in this man's life. He starts out giving the speech for his scholarship, but instead the speeches themselves aren't important. The speeches are almost ethereal and magical and always happen in a way to tell like a meaning or something that's changing in the author's perspective. So when he's giving his speech to accept the scholarship, the speech he's saying slips away, is almost unintelligible, and it's just describing the blood that's pouring in his mouth and that keeps coming out because he's trying to speak and keeps... And then when he's telling speeches on the streets, they're never like they start, but then there is a magical ethereal quality to them where it's almost the feeling of public speaking and then the feeling of the crowd coming back to him, and then the action happens and he thinks it's because of his speech. The weird magical quality of it. And then, of course, there's the narrator finding himself, establishing his identity by writing down his story, which is a type of free speech. So truth plays a big role in this book. Truth gets the narrator in trouble, but is also reveals trouble that the narrator is in a way, and is also the spirit of his dead grandfather, which, cool. In the narrator's dream, after he gets his scholarship, he looks inside his scholarship gift, and in it he finds an envelope, and it's empty. It's just full of other envelopes, until he finds a tiny placard that says, "Run." The donor in the college asks to see the true situation of black people, and that gets the narrator kicked out. The truth of the narrator's job, of what he is doing, and what the machine is for, is hidden from him, and that is what destroys everything in that job. Brotherhood, which are the group of white men that the Brotherhood, which is the group of white men that pay him to say speeches in order to whip out crowds and to have support on the streets for civil rights, is not comfortable with what black people need. They're only comfortable with what they want to have, and they're not being authentic to the needs or the response of black people and think that they should be able to control it. The narrator being true to his friend and the legacy of his friend is what causes the Brotherhood to fire the narrator, and then that firing is what makes the narrator really lash out in a grand speech. It causes the Harlem Riot.
Stahin ya strahas stumi hey ya sis hawaru he hen as snusef no ya eve straha stu ar stih heo list exactly who has ya first to me sticky stroke no own us satsifa.
Then, of course, visibility, vision. There's a lot to do about perception in Invisible Man. Oh, and This Is America. I think the narrator is in part a symbol for the needs of the black community in America, and how the black community is intrinsically tied to the white community. White people that are the majority of the population and control the government and make the laws, but also make the scholarships and change the laws and are allies on some level. It isn't a matter of the narrator being literally invisible, but of others purposefully or ignorantly ignoring his presence that makes him invisible. If no one looks at you, you might as well be invisible. It's like ninja rules. It is, willing or not, a refusal to recognize the needs of people, and that those needs are tied to the community at large and to white people. We need to start thinking collectively as Americans, because we affect each other and are affected collectively. There are many white people, news commentators, weird Republicans in the libertarian dystopia of Wisconsin who blame black people for their problems. And we see this everywhere. The black people need to be nicer to the police. The black people need to do this. The black need to stop with their hip hop. The black need to stop doing whatever. The black need to stop wearing their weird clothes. And then they wonder why the black people haven't fixed all of their problems. And it's simply because it's not their problem. It's our problem. They are more than willing to fix it, and they will tell us how. But we haven't listened. We haven't looked at them. We're too busy looking at news or looking at commentators we like. We haven't done enough. There are things that black people need, and then there are things that we're comfortable giving them. And we have just done what's comfortable. Sure, it took a long time, and white people fought back, but giving the black people the vote, we thought that would be enough, and we're comfortable with it. Then even Martin Luther King Jr. says, where do we go from here? Look at all these other needs we need to do. Look at all these poor people. Look at all these terrible jobs. Look at what capitalism has wrought. And that is why there's still problems. And we finally see them once in a while. They bubble up, and they're finally being more visible with the police shootings. When we hear when an unarmed black person gets shot now, and we can talk about it, the information is out there, and thanks to people listening, it's getting harder and harder to ignore, but it is still easily ignored. You may be in a weird corner of the country where you barely ever see black people, but black people always see white people. Black people always have white people available. White people in their face. White people telling them what to do. White people in their shows. Invisible Man and several other key items of black literature, white people play a prominent and problematic and clear role. Black problems are our problems. And the police departments and the laws that we have on the books are part of the problem. This book, Invisible Man, informed the civil rights movement. It was published in 1952. It is over 60 years old. It is 2 years older than my dad. But there is still more to do, and there is still lessons from this book that apply today. For like most everyone else in this country, I started out with my share of optimism. I believed in hard work and progress and action. But now, after first being for society and then being against it, I assign myself no rank or any limit. And such an attitude is very much against the trend of times. But my world has become one of infinite possibilities. What a phrase. Still, it's a good phrase. And a good view of life. And a man shouldn't accept any other. That much I've learned while underground. Until some gang succeeds in putting the new world in a straitjacket, its definition is possibility. The needs of black people are still invisible. And that is what makes riots happen. It is the voice of the voiceless. When the needs are ignored so much that a community must strike back with protest, and that protest can then possibly rupture into violence. It is part of being ignored, and it is not their fault. It is everyone's fault. It is our fault for ignoring those needs for so long. Ellison said about his own book, "The hero's invisibility is not a matter of being seen, but a refusal to run the risk of his own humanity, which involves guilt. This is not an attack upon white society. It is what the hero refuses to do in each section which leads to further action. He must assert and achieve his own humanity. He cannot run back and do this. This is the reason for all the reversals." I was looking for myself and asking everyone except myself questions which I and only I could answer. It took me a long time and much painful boomeranging of my expectations to achieve realization everyone else appears to have been born with. That I am nobody but myself. And then This Is America picks up where Invisible Man left off. There are enough black people that have gotten over obstacles, that have been able to make some kind of art, that have been able to rise in business, that now, instead of black people saying there's no one that they can point to, there's a couple that we point to. But we point to those people instead of the rest of black people. We take the exceptions to say that the rules are good. In This Is America, Donald Glover is very distracting, and it is him. He is rendering the background invisible. And that is what he's saying in his music video. We are still very distracted and willing to overlook the problems of black people. If Invisible Man said that we can't see the needs of black people, This Is America shows that we don't need to see even the outcry of black people at the lack of their needs. In their last form of communication, protesting, which was the civil rights movement and was what got them the vote, would today be easily ignored. If Invisible Man says the needs are invisible, This Is America says the last cry of them is invisible. This isn't a tortured metaphor because it's wrong or because it's a stretch. This is a tortured metaphor because it is old, because it has been held on for so long, and we have the same problem, and it has only grown. It has only been mutated. It is only a horrendous beast of the problem it once was. It's a problem that is torturing us as a community and torturing black people. It is our problem. And the longer we let it fester, the worse it will get. Cool. Thanks for watching. This is something that I'm very concerned about and is historically very concerning. And I know, like, I'm a white person and I can't comment on black culture completely as authority, but I can comment on my culture and what we've done and what I think we have to do. And I do think that it is our problem. Like isn't a strong word, so if I've met that very low threshold of, tolerating or making you laugh a little or making you think, hit that like button. It helps my video. I like it. You like it. Like, not a strong word. Please leave a comment if I got any quotes wrong, because I feel like there were a bunch of typos in that last one. But try to add it onto a real comment and not just put an annoying correction in there, because if you just put like one or two words and little asterisks, I have no idea what you're talking about. Come check out my Patreon. That bit in the intro about working a retail job kind of comes from like real experience. And follow my Patreon even if you don't have money to give me right now. Go there and follow it. I have lots of fun updates and there will be fun stuff to do. I'm thinking of lowering the threshold for credits to $5. Big thank you to Troubleshooter, my first $5 patron. What else? Am I missing anything? Okay. Hey, how long are you, Black Lodge guys gonna hang around? Okay.
But why do the work when I'm doing just fine on my own? And I don't mind being alone. I'm doing fine, me on my own. And I don't mind being alone. I'm doing fine, me on my own. And I'm trying to read what you want from